for a really long time, I've just run Debian, and recently I decided I'm going to also run Fedora. So I installed it at work, and then I installed it as well at home, but I wanted to keep Debian as well because my wife also uses Debian, and I didn't want us to both be dual booting. So anyways, I have my home directory on the same partition as the system in Debian, and I didn't bother putting it on a separate partition. And so what I do in Fedora, this is from FS tab. It's FS tab in Fedora, and I just mount my Debian root partition to mount Debian. And then from within that mount point, mount Debian home broc, I mount that. This is on Fedora. I mount that. This is for my FS tab in Fedora. I mount that here. And this is the option that you use here is bind. That's you're not mounting a partition. You're mounting a folder within a partition to a different point on the system. And I looked up about symbolic links, and it wasn't sounding quite right to me. And as I read, it can cause some issues with some systems. So the only application configuration issue that I had was with the Oxygen cursor themes. And on Debian, it's called OxyWhite. And on Fedora, it's called this. So I just did a symbolic link. Symbolic links have been very helpful in this process. And in Debian, it's just called grub, even though it is grub2. And they actually call it grub2 in Fedora. So I did that, and you'll see why that's relevant later on. And another thing that was interesting is rename is different on Fedora. It works differently. And so rename on Debian is what prename is. Perl rename is on Fedora. So I did this symlink as well. I had to do these symlinks so my scripts don't break. And clipboard access. I want to be able to do YY and that, copy that whole line to the clipboard. And so on Debian, you just have to put something in your vimrc and install gvim, and then it works. However, on Fedora, you have to actually use vimx. So in all of my scripts and everything that I use, we'll call vi or vim, and I just symlinked it. And if I want to literally just use vim, I'll do the literal path, user bin vim, and I symlink it to user local bin because that has higher priority than user bin. So if I zoom in, echo, there we go. See, higher priority than user bin right there. And this is one I have not bothered adapting for because I have 26 instances where I use libx264 in my FFmpeg one, because in my FFmpeg scripts, and Debian libx264, Fedora lib openh264. That's the video codec. So here's another one, my cow launch script. Cow works differently. So I've ended up with this in quite a few places. If the file ets os release contains the string Fedora, then do a thing. So cow has different options. And if you look at the man pages, they actually each have conflicting information. So I just run this function, and this is for a calendar thing that I use to integrate in with Awesome Window Manager. I won't get into the details of it, but so there are different options. So I had to make adjustments for that. And this is all because I share the same home directory and share the same files. So this is fun. I run PO, that stands for power off. And if I am on Fedora and I'm at home, because I run this also at work, if I'm on Fedora, this string exists in this file, and here's my file that tells all my scripts and everything and all my configuration that I'm at home. It will do this command, which I actually learned about through this process, sudo grub2 reboot and 4, which would be the fifth option because 0 counts in the grub menu. And then, of course, systemctl power off. And so the next time my computer boots, it will select 4. So if I'm running Fedora, it'll boot the next option down, which is Debian. Because that way I mix it up a little bit. I'm not just booting Fedora every single time. And sometimes it boots Fedora and sometimes it boots Debian. And so Fedora always keeps 3 kernels at any given time. And so I'm pretty sure that's, yeah. And so 4 is always going to select Debian, the latest Debian. Otherwise, it's just going to power off. If I'm running Debian, it'll just power off. And then by default, it'll select 0 on the grub menu, which is going to be Fedora. And to be able to shut off my machine and select this option, you need sudo access. So I edited the sudoers file just like this, and that's commented out, of course, because it's a comment in my script here. And I also have this alias if I want to reboot. If I am SSH'd in to this machine and I want to reboot to Debian. Sometimes I might need to do that. And what is the other thing? This is the last thing. And then I want to get into my SSH, how I did SSH, which I find to be interesting. Let's see. So I created a little basic profile for my wife. And the issue is she has her profile on this computer as well, but she just is using Debian. Well, it could be that I'm connected via SSH to the home computer, and from there I'm connected to other computers on the network doing administration tasks. Well, she can't just log in and, oh, this is Fedora, I need to go to Debian and reboot it, because that would disconnect me. And therefore, I have this in place. So I gave her a little login, a little basic login on Fedora. And this is her bash profile. And so this is run. I run the who command. And if I am logged in, it says this. It tells her that I'm currently logged in. And then it'll notify me on my phone. And then I can finish up what I'm doing and then reboot the computer for her. Otherwise, it'll just automatically reboot. And I tell her to select Debian. Maybe that's a little bit too... She knows how to do this, but I just wrote it out. It's a little over the top. And now I'm going to talk about my SSH setup. I'm dual booting Fedora and Debian. And so of course, this is the same computer with the same MAC address. And initially I thought, well, I'll just do the same host name, I'll use DHCP address reservation for the same IP address and have the same port open on both for SSH. And that everything worked fine doing that networking wise, except for my known hosts, and that kept causing issues. So it's better practice to make them all distinct. And so the host name's different, the local IP address is different, the ports are different, both local and remote, and they're all different so as not to cause issues. Well, then I run into the issue of I'm at the office or I'm somewhere else. I don't necessarily know or remember whether Debian or Fedora is booted. So I have to kind of figure out, try one. If it doesn't work, try the other. And I thought, well, I'm not going to fool around with that. So I use this script called home SSH from whatever computer I'm on. And here's my key, my SSH key. And I run curl silent to my URL. And I check this file that's called currentos.txt. Let's cat that out. And all it says is Debian. And if that says Fedora, then I run another if statement. And I made the timeout 30 milliseconds. But really, let's see, curl. Well, curl that. It says home network. And it really just takes about 5-7 milliseconds. But I played on the safe side. I made the timeout 30 milliseconds. And so on one of my computers on my LAN, I just put this file because I have a web server running locally. And if that connects, then that tells me that I'm on the LAN. So then I'll use the local IP address instead of the domain name address and the external port. And then, of course, I've got the same exact if statement here. And then I use the Debian credentials. And if this doesn't work, then I know that I'm connecting remotely away from my home network. Well, how in the world does this page here, though, is it not just going to say Fedora all the time? No, and that's where this next part comes in. So let's first open up currentos.service. And so I run this on both Debian and Fedora. And it launches, and of course it just runs after the network is up in DNS. And then it just runs the script, currentos submit. So let's open up currentos submit. All right, so I could not get this to work properly on Fedora, even with the requirement, the network requirement. And I ended up needing to do sleep 5, but that's all right, it doesn't matter. And then all I do is I run this curl command where the form field, I set myOS to one of these, and then I have my password, and then I write that to, and then I connect it to currentos.php. So then let's go to currentos. I think we can close this, and we'll open up both of these. And then this is what I have on my website. If the password is the secret key, then I just write the data of either Fedora or Debian to this file. And then we can go back to the home SSH, and you can see that's where I check for it. So what happens? I run a service that there's a systemd service that runs the script, which uses curl to submit what's basically kind of like a web form, but it is a way of writing to a file on my website, and then on that website, it's a way that from anywhere you can check whether I have Debian or Fedora booted at that time. And then my SSH script just reads that file, and that way it knows whether to connect to the port and the address for Debian or to Fedora. And I think that's everything. Hope you enjoyed this, and hope the rest of your day is enjoyable.